Welcome back to A Man in a Sea of Lies. And this is this State of a Nation video that I promised. And I'm going to list a few things that are of concern to me. Uh, of course, the list is not complete. It's just, I don't pretend to do a comprehensive analysis all the time. This is more uh, of a statement of how I feel about what's going on in our country right now. I think right now what characterizes our state of the nation is uncertainty, and you don't have to dig all that deep to see where the uncertainty comes from. All you have to do right now is really go to the grocery store. I look at my grocery bills all the time, and last month was catastrophic. I don't go out. I cook at home. I don't cook anything fancy, just simple meals. That's the way I like it. I'm not doing it because of money, but I just like simple food. So I don't know. Last month I spent like a couple of $100 more on groceries than the month before. So the food inflation is an issue. It's a real thing. It's painfully obvious to everybody, and I can see that people have changed their behavior. You can see the shopping carts at your local grocery store, what people are buying, and how careful they are about everything. Next on the list is, of course, business investment. And I mentioned this before, but our businesses invest at less than half the rate of American businesses invest, less than half. And this uncertainty doesn't really have anything to do with Donald Trump or the war or anything like that. It's just a pretext to dismiss the crisis that we're in. Reality of it is that there has been always almost $400 billion worth of capital that left Canada to invest elsewhere, mostly in the United States, of course. So the capital investment is leaving Canada. Businesses that are already functioning in Canada are investing at less than half the rate of what businesses invest in the United States. And then, of course, that brings us to the job market. I mean, the job losses have been absolutely tragic. 100,000 people lost their jobs in January and February in Canada. It's crazy stuff. So the job market is a clear indicator that things are not, that we're not doing well as far as the economy goes. And then, of course, we have these old problems of deficits and debt. We always played with these things, our governments, and it's what Carney is doing now is just tragic. Over $70 billion worth of $70 billion deficit, and our debt between the provinces and the federal government is approaching a $3 trillion level right now. So this is, it's just pure insanity. This is a downward spiral that I've never seen before in Canada. It brings us to the housing crisis we experiencing. The market sort of collapsed as far as purchases go, especially in Ontario and in BC. And even though the prices came down, they're way off when it comes to affordability levels for working Canadians. So the market is stagnating, but still people can afford to buy anything. Even if the prices, I don't know how much the prices will have to go down in order for regular working stiffs to be able to afford a home these days in Canada, especially a first house. And general inflation is skyrocketing. I used to sell cars, and I look at car prices now versus where they were, like 10, 15 years ago, and it's it's absolutely astounding how expensive vehicles are. You could back in the day, you could buy a commercial van for 20 grand. Now it's 65 grand plus tax. And that's just a base, like a box van or something like that, right? So general inflation continues to be an issue. And it's pretty much out of control. I don't know how Statistics Canada manipulates the numbers, but from my gut feeling and from what I observe around, the Canadian economy, the inflation numbers are much, much, much higher. And income, of course, is nowhere near where it should be. It's stagnating. Purchasing power is declining rapidly. Our purchasing power and net income levels, as compared to the United States of America, are in the toilet. My rough estimate is that we're living right now at half the level of what the Americans are living. And there's all kinds of other stuff, like military procurement. I have a separate video about that. Back when I arrived in Canada in 1982, we've already started receiving CF-18s. And that was 1982. The first planes started arriving in Canadian Air Force bases in 1981. And the whole procurement program was started in 1977. So 3, 4, 5 years, let's say, and we had a full fleet of fighter jets ready to defend Canada's airspace. And now F-35s, this replacement thing for CF-18s, this is a saga that's been ongoing for the last 25 years and no end in sight. And the cost is rising every year dramatically. And there's all kinds of other things. The list is so long, it's crazy. Look at the RCMP, for example. The Canadians don't have faith, or they don't trust the RCMP anymore. It used to be the trademark for Canada, a Mountie in a red uniform on a horse. It was the symbol of Canada, really, law enforcement people that were committed to their jobs and did their jobs really well. Now they're short of thousands of officers, but it doesn't stop them from implementing quotas, hiring quotas. Even though they're missing a couple thousand officers right now, they're still set on quotas for Indigenous people, for women and minorities. This is just plain stupid. The recent thing that just came up is this high-speed rail proposal from Carney. We're going to spend $90 billion building a high-speed rail connection, in the Windsor-Montreal corridor, I suppose. $90 billion? This kind of approach to infrastructure building, designing all these huge projects, that's not the way to go. You got to build everything incrementally and consistently. We haven't been able to electrify our railway system yet. If you go to Europe, for example, even like old countries like Central European countries that they just shed the shackles of communism not long ago, their train systems are working very well. Everything is electrified. It was even electrified under the communists, 40 years ago, most of it. And one thing that's interesting about this railway thing proposal is that the company that the feds are dealing with is when it comes to building this rail is SNC Lavalin. They changed their name and they rebranded themselves, but these are the same people whose corruption was exposed under Justin Trudeau. And that, and there's other small stuff. I went to Montreal not too long ago, and I had to drop something off at one of the Montreal's hospitals. And it was late in the day. I didn't know the setup, so I just parked in a regular parking lot. I went inside the hospital, and I was in there for 20 minutes. And when I came out, I had to pay $30 for parking. So the level of greed is astronomical. And this trickles down to business investments, investors, like everybody sees that everybody's so set on greed that it trickles down to all aspects of life in Canadian society. $30 for 20 minutes of parking at a hospital? But our healthcare system is, of course, part of the public service, and our public service employment continues to explode, and the money they're earning, they're approaching making twice as much money as an average working stiff in Canada. Whoever's in working for the government. I mean, the list is endless. This Air Canada accident, LaGuardia, for example. I couldn't believe what I've heard when I saw on television. Two pilots have died, and the whole conversation was about language and the vile messages from politicians and activists in Quebec. The outrage about Air Canada's president expressing condolences only in English. Okay, it wasn't a nice thing to do. They should have known better. But it's relatively minor. Now he's forced to retire, which really means resign. So we care more about appearances and grandstanding than anything else. So this bilingualism, look at Ontario. There's signs everywhere in French and English. What for? East, West. Everybody understands that. So we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on bilingualism for no particular reason. So the bottom line is we continue to shoot ourselves in the foot while we're pretending and thinking that we're doing the right thing morally. It's I don't know what to think about that. Are we that stupid? Or it's like I feel sometimes like we're on a Titanic and in the North Atlantic in the middle of the night, and nobody's watching for the icebergs. And now, all the pundits and talking heads are bringing up Carney's performance at Davos. To me, that speech was meaningless, completely meaningless. And then he went to the Juno Awards and he was treated there as a hero. For what? It's just a politician. But all these people went crazy praising him, all the artists and stuff like that. This speaks volumes to me, in a way that we sort of created the different version of reality. To move around in our political and economic life, and the regular working Canadians are paying the bill for it all. And now today I've heard that Mark Carney was proclaimed the most trusted political leader in the entire world. So we are aligning ourselves politically with all these Davos people, the large corporations, the multinationals and stuff like that. I don't know why we're so naive, but it's our naivete that is the core of the problem. And our Canadians are so trustworthy towards their politicians. So this is going nowhere. The economic crisis especially is gonna continue to intensify, because we're painting ourselves into a corner. Like Bank of Canada can't do much. Raise interest rates, lower interest rates. The housing crisis is in crisis. The housing market is in crisis. So we because of what we've built over the last 15 years when it comes to Canadian economy and politics, it's been so unsustainable that now eventually a waiter is going to come with the bill and somebody's going to have to pay for it. So people are cutting back, people are cutting down. They're not spending as much. They're really beginning to be cautious. But politically speaking, you have an explanation for everything, because Donald Trump and the war, which just started a month ago, by the way, right? But what the Liberals have been doing with the Canadian economy and political life has been going on for more than 10 years. So, I mean, Poilievre, he's gaining some ground, but I don't know that he's the answer. But certainly, Mark Carney's ain't the answer at all. He's just digging a deeper hole for all of us, both politically and economically. And the media is doing everything they possibly can to justify his actions and to protect him from criticism. So this is not going to end well. We're looking into a much deeper crisis, I think, that's coming, especially the economy. I'm sorry, but that's my state of the nation assessment for Canada on this day. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. So long.